Hi, my name's Arthur. Back in 2025, I was manning a psychic phone line. They had a lady call out of the blue. She was more concerned about her friends. That's when a younger lady had stepped in. To me, she looked younger than her actual age, but at that time I didn't actually know who it was. I got given the name Libby, Libby. I asked the lady on the phone if she knew a younger lady, a girl, with this length hair in the spirit world. She said, "No, I don't." I said, "Are you sure? Because she's here." She's given me the name Libby. I said, "Can you ask your friend?" Because this lady was calling on behalf of another lady who was part of it was domestic violence, basically, but I tapped into that. And this lady was calling because she's concerned about her friend. Anyway, the lady did call back and said, "My friend doesn't know a Libby." And it didn't surprise me because I actually got the impression that both of these ladies didn't know. But because I have had a lot of training in mediumship, meaning being able to directly communicate with people who have transitioned, to me this doesn't come as a surprise, because there are information that I get that most people, it just escapes. Anyway, there's another little talent that I have, and that is being able to draw portraiture. Now, I've been doing this in spiritualist venues for quite some time. I used to do it all the time, actually. Not so much these days. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because sometimes I used to draw people who were alive, living, breathing, and other times people who had transitioned. But always I would have set information written down in relation to the drawing. And sometimes, well, one particular time I drew a cat. That's another story altogether. But I was able to link to the lady in the center who belonged to that cat. Also had her had information about her father, and I said, just to make sure 100% this is your reading. And I looked through the sheet and I went, right there, this gentleman, his wife has to be named Patricia. And she just burst into tears, because that was her mother, who had also transitioned. So that's what I do, and I've been doing it for quite a while. Sometimes I've drawn people that are alive and breathing, but the information belongs to people from the spirit world. And the only way that these readings got to the people that they were supposed to get to was because other people had recognized the person I had drawn, regardless of me never meeting them before. So I would hand the venue the drawing, and it would go to the correct recipient. So that's what I do, and I have been doing for a while. So, Libby. It became apparent to me, this was after the fact, that Libby was a nickname. And through much research, I realized and come to the realization it was either one or two variables. It was either Liberty, which isn't really a common name in Australia, or it's Elisabeth. And then the penny started dropping and everything started fitting into place. So the spirit world urged me to do a drawing. And in fact, it was the 15th of September 2025. Let me see if I can, there we go. I no longer have the drawing that was given somewhere else for safekeeping. I just kept a file, a visual. Now, the 15th of September is my father's birthday. So I thought, hey Dad, what a wonderful day and what a wonderful gift to have you smile from the other side. But I asked, who am I drawing? And I heard the direct response was the Assailant. Now, English is a second language for me. My parents were both Greek, they were both immigrants, and the way I learned English was I was born here, we went to Greece, I came back to Australia, and the way I learned English was to be thrown into primary school. And I had to learn. That's the way I learned. So my level of English is not the English that would be spoken by people who had either English ancestors or Australian-born ancestry. So to me, I had to look up what the word assailant meant. Basically the murderer. And I went, well, that makes it easier. So, on the 15th, I started to draw this in a public space. I won't mention where. But I showed the gentleman that, yes, I don't have anything drawn on here. And as I'm drawing, I'm getting information, but the information I was putting on a separate piece of paper. And then I realized that the separate piece of paper needs to be hidden because some of the information that came out was, you'll know in a second why. Now, there is a particular mother out there, and I don't want to get too emotional, who actually wants to know where her daughter is. And that lady's name, that mother's name, is Joy Membry. And the young lady named Libby, with the nickname Libby, who came through on that day, was Elisabeth Membrey, the young lady who disappeared quite a few decades ago in Australia. Thank you. Confirmation, there's a tap. And it's a mystery. But it's not a mystery. The mystery is that there were 3 people involved, 2 very, very deeply and 1 sort of superficially. As I connected into the information, there was something about an earth mover, 1 man earth mover. So excavator, I should say, you know what I mean, to dig a hole. Yeah. Now, this is where the part that I haven't said anything and I've kept it to myself until I've decided why. I did call Crime Stoppers, I did pass on information, I did pass on that I had actually drawn a portrait, and the portrait was at XYZ, if they were interested. Now, this also, when I drew the portrait, I got instructed to write Sanskrit, Libby in Sanskrit, and I'm like, I don't actually understand what that means. Now, this is what I wrote. This is how I drew Libby. And then I realized Sanskrit is that cursive bit. I don't know whether you're hearing that, but that's not me tapping. Clearly I'm in front of you. So Libby and the Sanskrit. And upon research, Sanskrit is the curly. So anyway, this is Elisabeth Membrey's assailant. He didn't look like this when he committed the crime. Well, he was one of 3, but there was 2 parties involved. This is him, what he looks like now. Back in the day, he was young. He wasn't bald. He had light-coloured hair. He had blue eyes, a very, very distinct chin, crevice in his chin. He wasn't bald, yeah. Based on the information that I got, which I hid because I wasn't going to say anything, I was able to locate a historical photo which resembled this gentleman, but quite a few decades earlier, at the time of Elisabeth's disappearance. The damning evidence is that he's actually part of, he's a forensic detective or investigator, something along those lines. He tampered with evidence. Number one. Number two, I was on a walk earlier this year. It's 2026. And there was a particular man who got my attention because he was acting a little bit strange. So much so that I started, my senses started going off. I normally don't read people, but all of a sudden I started reading the engine. I'm like, there's something really off here, and his behaviour was very, very strange. So much so that he freaked out. He did we were crossing the road, we're waiting for the traffic to be crossed. Instead of going this way, he went this way, up there, and around there. And by the time he did this loop thing, the lights turned green, as in the man turned green, and I was able to cross the road and wait there. And he did this whole thing and ended up there. And I'm like, this gentleman's acting weird. He's a weirdo. But the thing is, this gentleman was wearing a cricketer's bucket hat, one of those white. Yes, and he got a little bit nervous, and he started moving the hat, and then all of a sudden I realised who he was. Same chin, blue eyes, same fatso as you see as you see here. Sir, I like your banana socks. Not really, but you know. What's the matter? Did you get nervous face to face with a medium, psychic medium? But you were a bit more bold and brash back in the day when you were unaliving young ladies. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the lady on the phone line who was concerned about her friend, the lady is in Victoria, her friend. I can't mention her name. You'll have to call up Crime Stoppers because Elisabeth Membrey is actually buried on that property. That's where you will find the body. Around chickens. So, Joy, you would be familiar with this man. You would have seen him throughout the years. The very distinct chin and the blue eyes is a dead giveaway. He wasn't bald back then. He had lighter coloured hair, now he is. And when he was moving his hat, he actually disclosed his baldness. And I have to say, I'm quite proud of myself. For a man that I had never met, I did a really good job. Let's just look at him one more time. There we go. The Assailant, ladies and gentlemen. So, where to find him? Well, that's actually quite easy. Excuse me, everything's gone blurry. Let me just, beautiful. Actually, that's quite easy. He can be found loitering around Nando's on Burke Street in Melbourne. Burke Street's an interesting place in Melbourne. If you know, you know. Also part of a boys' club. If you know, you know. You wanted to know what happened to your daughter and where you can find her, Joy? Well, I'm appealing to the lady who called up a psychic phone line and spoke to an Arthur. That would be me. And I used to introduce myself as, I'm Arthur 153. Call Crime Stoppers, reach out. I hope your friend's okay as well. But that's why the gentleman didn't want a divorce, etc., etc. It's because there's other things that he didn't want discovered. He was involved. How? I don't know. I wasn't told. I can only pass on the information that I was given. But thanks to mediumship, thanks to Libby herself, Elisabeth, and there's something about a tattoo. Libby and a tattoo in Sanskrit. I believe someone has also put in a... When I was speaking to Crime Stoppers, I heard the term bitch stamp. And I didn't know what it meant. And it's basically... that there is in particularly focused to the back of lower section of the back, just above, lower back anyway. I didn't know that. It just flew out as I was speaking to the investigator over the phone. I've heard nothing. So one thing I will say, and I'll always say when it comes to authenticity, one rotten fruit will rot the entire crate. And as much as the boys' club, which also includes women, is there to support one another, you are there, you have been sworn in, you have done an oath, you are there to do some work, you are there to do your role. That is not to rot the institution and what it stands for from the inside. And it just takes one to destroy the entire foundation and everything around it. And it's about time we start doing better and demonstrating better. Because at the end of the day, there was a young lady who was murdered. And also, I'm getting the understanding, she was murdered because she overheard something or she knew something a bit deeper than surface level. And she went missing because it was the most convenient way to silence someone. May I leave that with everyone?